Meanwhile, government has moved to ease competition rules for South Africa's distressed smelters, opening the door for embattled industries like ferrochrome to collaborate on cutting soaring power costs. Trade and Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau has amended the exemption, allowing firms in industries deemed to be in distress to jointly negotiate power supply and share energy infrastructure as well. Well, joining me in studio now to share his insights on what this move means for the sector is independent energy analyst Tshepo Kgadima. Tshepo, hi, good to have you with us on The Close. What exactly has been agreed to here with ferrochrome smelters? Because there's been a lot of tension over this.
Yeah, indeed. I think the question that needs to be answered is this actually an effective and an appropriate remedy, or the much needed tonic for the very sickly economy, in terms of the minister's intervention to relax the competition rules to allow the smelter or the so-called energy intensive users to then jointly negotiate either in an industry association or the likes. And my answer is a categoric no. It is not the effective and appropriate remedy, but also it is unlawful. One has to bear this in mind. Eskom, which still remains the only provider of electricity, particularly for energy-intensive users, is a state organ. Therefore, it is governed by the Constitution, and Eskom itself is an organ of statute in terms of the Eskom Conversion Act, as well as governed by Public Finance Management Act. Now, when you look at the Constitution, Section 217 of the Constitution, that deals with procurement, and you go then look at Section 6, subsection 5, A and B of the Eskom Conversion Act, which mandates universal access at the least cost. So effectively, what is required in this country is a standardized uniform tariff that must be the lowest as stipulated in terms of the relevant statutes, particularly the Eskom Conversion Act, in order to ensure that this economy can be globally competitive, but also to ensure that you don't end up in the situation whereby there is unlawful discrimination or unconstitutional discrimination, because if you can have a dispensation for the so-called energy-intensive users, in this case the smelters, either ferrochrome or ferromanganese. The question that stands to be asked is that, what about everybody else? What about us? We are on air. There's a lot of energy that is currently being consumed, and the unit cost of that electricity that keeps us on air, unfortunately, it makes us to be one of the highest cost producers.
Okay, let's cut to the chase. And why is it so expensive? Now, these smelters have been arguing that overseas, people are paying half of what we are paying here. Why are we paying so much?
We are paying so much because of nothing but corruption. And again, those that are running Eskom, they just seemingly are continuing to disregard the legal stipulation in terms of ensuring that both in terms of PFMA, particularly Section 51 of PFMA, and then Section 6 of the Eskom Conversion Act, which mandates them to have to find the lowest cost. So today in this country, you can produce electricity, a unit of electricity, for no more than 32 cents a kilowatt hour. The question that then has not been answered is, to what extent constitute fruitless, wasteful expenditure, whereby electricity costs between 238 cents a kilowatt hour, and in some instances, particularly households, ordinary households, are paying well over 5 rand a kilowatt hour. That is a problem, and that is really where the corruption is. The race that must be won to be globally competitive, because we have to compare ourselves with peer economies like China, developing economy, India, Turkey. In China, the electricity cost is 8 US cents a kilowatt hour. In South Africa, we are ranging anywhere between 25 and 32 cents a kilowatt hour. Whereas in India, it's 7 US cents a kilowatt hour. And Turkey is also in the mix there between 7 and 8 cents a kilowatt hour
Okay.
US. That's really where we need to get
Yeah.
to if we are to remain competitive as an
If I
economy.
can come in here, though, I mean, why is it? Are we paying off debt? Now, we know that what happened during state capture, thereafter, there was that big debt of, I think, 450 billion.
Yeah.
The government sort of shaved off half of that. Are we paying back debt? Are we paying back for past mistakes or, like you say, past corruption?
Well, the problem is that corruption is continuing. And it has been going on for at least the last 20 years. So if you look at the economy of this country, in the last 30 years, the first 10 years we had economic growth. Then we went into a pedestrian rate of economic growth. And then we went into effectively a recession or zero growth environment over the last 8 to 10 years. And now that brought about things that we had warned about, by the way, previously. I mean, I'm on record as early as 2012 to have warned that the mechanism of financing we chose to build Medupi and Kusile was going to result not only in cost overruns, but in any event was going to create a debt that would be unmanageable.
Sure.
Treasury has thankfully come through, cut the Eskom debt by half, shaved off 254 billion rand. The problem now arises in that Eskom has believed, for whatever reasons best known to them, that the consumer in South Africa, whether industrial, commercial, or even domestic, in terms of households, has got an inelastic capacity to absorb the price. But that is unfounded. We see now already they are sitting with 13,000 megawatts of excess capacity. At the same time, the debt is spiraling. And even though the debt, that is municipal debt, which is spiraling now over 105 billion, and even though they have had this 254 billion rand windfall, they are just inefficient and continue to embark on a route.
Tshepo, if I can come in again, I mean, what's the way forward for 2026? We can't keep up this momentum with price hikes. There was the Pretoria High Court recently, and they said there was a thumbsuck. No, said there was a thumbsuck. In a nutshell, what happens this year?
This year, what is required in order for Eskom, by the way, to be a going concern, and these are not my words, as much as they are wax lyrical about being profitable, the auditor of Eskom thinks otherwise. In fact, has put a qualification in terms of going concern status of Eskom. What Eskom, the board of Eskom, as well as management, they need to be seized with one goal and one goal only. How do you bring the electricity tariffs down to a uniform standardized tariff cost or bracket of between 7 US cents and 5 US cents? That is between 87 cents South African and 1 Rand 22 cents South African.
That is a totally realistic target, but will we see it? I think that's the big thing. Tshepo, thank you so much for coming into the Close on Business Day TV. We do appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
That was independent energy analyst Tshepo Kgadima.